You don't know me, I don't know you, but we'll get acquainted. When I'm teaching class, I expect people to answer me if I ask a question. I also expect you to ask questions. In my classes, there is no such thing as a stupid question. If you dare to preface your question, well, this may be a stupid question, I'll fine you $5. I'm going to Keys for a children's home or something. There are no stupid questions. Lots of stupid answers, and I may give some stupid answers, but there are no stupid questions. You learn best when you want to know, so ask away. But I sometimes get going pretty fast, and so if you need to ask a question or I'm going fast, you don't get pick one of those flags and flag me down. We're going to have some fun. This is a very serious subject, but we're going to try to have some fun because I am a firm believer that laughter enhances learning. And we're going to try to have some fun. Next time we're going to talk about big noses. The most famous big nose in literary history has something serious to tell us about Bible study. I'll chew on that one for a while. You have to come up with the answer to that next one. So anyway, we're going to have some fun. I have taught this for more than 60 years, lots of different places, and I'll spend a little bit of time tonight kind of giving my testimony and tell you how I got into it and why it is so serious to me. The whole series we're just going to call Digging. Humans dig for a lot of things. Little boys dig and dream of buried treasure. Utility companies dig to bring water, gas, electricity, all that into our homes. A woman may dig in her purse for her lipstick. Archaeologists dig to find and understand the past. We may dig to plant our gardens or our flower bushes. And we dig to bury our dead. But the most important reason to dig, whether physically or metaphorically, figuratively, is to lay firm foundations. And that's what this lesson is about, or these lessons of them. This will last us through March. We'll have 12 sessions, counting tonight. This one quarter doesn't have 13 Wednesdays in it, since the month started on a Thursday. But J.R. said to give me the time and we'll do it. We're going to consider two important things that we will have reason to dig. One, and this will be more of the set, they're not divided exactly in half. The first part will be to provide a solid foundation for our faith. We'll get into that more as we go. Why? And the firm foundation for biblical understanding. That's where the nose comes in. But before we have to dig, we have to know what we're digging in. I mean, digging in my backyard in Tennessee is different from digging in my front yard in Indiana or my garden in Indiana. And I lived kind of on a little bluff, and so I didn't live across the road from me. The farm field was black. Indiana soil's black. Kids would come from Indiana to Joplin to school and say, how come the dirt here is red? Because dirt in Missouri is red, but not in Indiana where I spent the last 33 years. What are we digging in? Stone? Dynamite? We got to know. You know, 60 years ago when I started this, I didn't have to deal with a lot of this. Things have changed. I'm an old man. It's just a little over 2 months, I'll be 84. But things have changed a lot. We need to know what can be a strong enough foundation for our lives. Can't build on dreams. Dreams fade. Too many people these days are trying to build on philosophical theory of one kind or another. But theories are empty shells. An awful lot of people now trying to build on some politically correct narrative. Such narratives are nothing but wishful thinking. I'm a wordsmith. I've made my living for 60-some years with words and pictures. And I hate what they've done to the word narrative. Narrative used to be just a story. And there are portions of the Bible, when we get into the second half of this, that we will determine are narrative. They're the story. They just take the story along. No particular lesson. It's just the narrative. But that's not what narrative means these days. We'll get into that just a little bit more, a little bit. All of it is just plain flat empty. There's nothing there. But if we have no foundation at all, if we don't examine and know our own foundation, how many people do you know that get up in the morning, go to work, earn a paycheck, so they can buy food and house their family, so they can get up the next morning and go to work and earn a paycheck, so they can buy food and house their family, and maybe go on vacation every once in a while, so they're refreshed to get up in the morning and go to work, and that's it. Socrates, a long time ago, says the unexamined life is not worth living. And there are a whole lot of people in our world that don't think a thing about what do I do tomorrow, will the paycheck stretch, and so on. What's your foundation? If, as a believer, you said the Bible, good. Should be. The Bible is the foundation. But is the Bible true? A lot of the world says no, it's not. You'd be amazed at people. Well, do you think the Bible's true? Well, parts of it. You know, there's a whole big chunk of the whole Christian world today that says, well, the Bible contains the Word of God. Is it? Is it true? Is it all true? Because truth is the only solid foundation. If the Bible's not true, it's no foundation. It's no better to build your life on that than on, I don't know. I'll admit, it's 2 years ago, week after next, since my wife passed away. I met her online 25 years ago, so I'm back on some of the dating apps. Ran across one woman the other day, says she's a Christian, her favorite books are the Bible, the Quran, and the Book of Mormon. She's in Florida and in her 40s, and so I don't know if I want to write this woman or not. 60 is my bottom line, but anyway, I thought, what on earth? I'm not teasing. You know, if anything's not true, it's just quicksand. There's nothing there. You ever go looking for truth and all you got is Pilate's question, what is truth? Remember when Jesus said, I came to bear witness to truth, and Pilate says, what is truth? I'm sure he said it just about that way. Truth. What is it? How can we know? That's what we're going to spend a good bit of our time on tonight. You know, there are a lot of people in the world that say there's no such thing as absolute truth. A few years after Sandra and I got married, we lived in central Indiana, Crawfordsville, about 50 miles west of Indianapolis. And she had a serious intestinal problem. Knot in her intestines, running a fever, lots of pain, took her to the emergency room, they did a scan, says, we're going to keep you overnight, we'll have emergency surgery in the morning as soon as the radiologist gets a chance to read the scan a little better. Well, her surgeon was a Dr. Stewart, and we became fairly well acquainted with him because he took out a section of her colon and then he had to go back later and put it back together. She had one of those bags for a while. We got acquainted with Dr. Stewart. He was very active in a local interdenominational church, probably the biggest church in town. And I don't know why we had this very brief friendship. He kind of moved out of town. He was getting to where he didn't want to stand on his feet all day long for surgery. Moved to be a GP in a little smaller town not far away. But in the course of the conversation, we had dinner in their house one time, and they came to our house one time. They asked if I would talk to their son, Jack. Jack was a student at Wabash College there in Crawfordsville. The oldest and maybe the only all-male college left. The joke around town was that the Wabash student body was 1,000 geniuses, and one guy's just plain smart. And you had to be pretty sharp to go there. Well, he wasn't a freshman out of class. They wanted me to talk to Jack because Jack was accepting what one of the professors told him, that there's no such thing as absolute truth. Jack gave me an example. He says, suppose there's a wreck. And we have 5 witnesses, and they all describe the accident differently. This is his example. It's true, it may be different, some of them might be wrong. That happens to be my car. Father's Day on my way home from Morristown, Father's Day evening. That guy told me I spun around 3 times. How's that not possible? You look at the evidence right there. Why could I not have spun around 3 times?
Tires.
It's blunt force to the front.
No, I'm not headed the right direction to have spun 3 times. I was going toward that sign when this gal flew out in front of me and I hit her. I may have gone 2 1/4 times. I may have gone 3 1/4 times, but I didn't go 3 times. But if I went 3 1/4 times, I did go 3 times around. Jack insisted, though, that since we can't know the truth about the accident, we assume there is no such thing as truth. Or at least, not that we can know. We sat and talked, yeah.
I always like it because if somebody says there is no absolute truth, you just simply need to ask them.
Yeah. Next slide, JR. Oh, come on, I hit the wrong one. I need to go back. Okay. I could not convince him that no absolute truth is a self-denying statement. If there's no absolute truth, the statement that there's no absolute truth is not necessarily true. 2 guys walking out of philosophy class in college, and one says, you believe what that professor said, that there's no absolute truth? The other guy says, absolutely. It can't be. It's what we call a self-denying statement. It denies its own, wait for it, truth. So what is truth then? Truth is anything, be it a TV program, a private conversation, a book, some electronic communication. It's anything that accurately represents reality. Are you here tonight?
Maybe.
Are you sure? Are you at least not sitting on a hard chair? My stool is kind of wobbly and I can't stand up for very long. But, yeah. Truth, anything that accurately represents reality. If there's reality, there's truth. And we'll use that as a working definition because I don't think that anything else you get into to try to define truth, my truth and your truth and true truth, no. Just forget it. If there's reality, there's truth. I don't care if it's a picture, if it's a movie, if it's gossip, if it's a letter, if it accurately represents what really happened, it's truth. Now somebody always challenges me, well, there's philosophical truth and there's spiritual truth. That's true. But it still must accurately represent reality. We'll get into that through these lessons several times. But how can we know what is true? Now here is where I have to back up. 60 years ago, I wouldn't have had to go into this at all. But I have to because our world has so abandoned the concept of truth. So I'm going to back up to borrow a line from The Blind Side, peel this onion one layer at a time. How do we know anything? Well, there are 3 ways we can obtain information. One is personal experience. You're here, you know you're here, that's personal experience. Hear this guy with the old gravel voice. Mental combination and testimony. And those are all the source of information there is. That's it. Now don't back off on me because that didn't tell you the Bible. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Very importantly, it does. Whether it's true or false, that's the only place we get it. Now, personal experience, we hear it, we see it, we smell it, we taste it, we feel it. got up this morning, flipped the percolator on, go boom, 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 boom. Are any of you old enough to remember that little ditty?
Yeah.
The Maxwell House song that we saw on Sunday afternoon right before we watched Gunsmoke, right? I don't care if it's one of these modern gadgets you turn on, it grinds the beans, and you hear it, you hear something, pouring it in the cup or something. You see it, you smell it, you feel it when you wrap your hands around that cup, it's a nice warm cup, and you taste it. You do, I don't care for coffee at all. But that is truth and experience. I know, that seems way too simple. But all information starts with somebody's experience, Bible included, and we'll go through that. Now, the next one is mental combination. You head out to go to work on Monday morning, you go past your favorite rose bush and says, that's one of my favorite things, raindrops on roses. You get out on the highway, and the highway's got rain all over, and that's one of your unfavorite things. And you think, it must have rained last night. You didn't see it rain. You were sound asleep, you didn't hear it rain. You didn't feel the rain on your face. You didn't stick a head out and taste the rain. But you know it rained last night. Now you know the neighbor could have sprayed his garden and got the raindrops on your roses, but the neighbor didn't go straight and spray the road. And so you have come to a conclusion by combining your previous experience with what you see this morning. And a whole lot of our information, knowledge, maybe we transfer from information to knowledge at about that point, comes that way. And then there's testimony, whether it's that TV or the conversation or the book or the electronic communication. Those are all testimony. Testimony is not just swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God. It's not just in the court of law. Anything that comes from any other source that we didn't experience or put the information together from our own experience, like the rain, comes from testimony. Everything. But to quote Shakespeare's Hamlet, there's the rub. We live in an information age. Internet, TV, podcasts, newspapers, gossip, rumors, Facebook, books, radio, YouTube, blogs, dating apps, phones, tests, texts, rumors, opinions, conspiracy theories, even sermons, speculation. They're all testimony. How do you sort it out? Because I can't stand very much. I spend a lot of time on my recliner and a lot of time watching YouTube because most of the rest of television isn't really anything. And I always have to wonder, can that possibly be true? Are you confused? Feeling a little overwhelmed? Me too. So we're put in a position to ask, what can we do about it? If we're digging for truth, how do we get there? There's only one thing we can do, and that's try to determine the truthfulness and accuracy of the source of the testimony we hear. Now, there used to be a philosophical, kind of school of philosophical thought called, wasn't pragmatism, logical positivism, which says nothing is real unless you can experience it with your own hands and repeat it in a laboratory. That was so obviously false. That one didn't last very long. Pragmatism is a little more common now than people call that, which means if it works, do it. If lying makes me more money, do it. That's okay, you know. But our job as students of the Word and anything else is to try to determine the truthfulness and accuracy of the source. And there's a big argument about whether the Bible may be truthful but not inerrant. Huh? That's a contradiction. Inerrant means without mistakes. If it's got mistakes, it ain't truth. Although the Bible does contain some lies. We'll get that in just a minute. It's not easy to see what influences the sources of the testimony we get, the worldview and motive and money and power and manipulation. All of these influence testimony. Why do people lie? There have been lies from the beginning. Did you realize that the third person, I'll call the person who is God, in the Bible be quoted as lying? All first statements in the Bible, God said, let there be, let this, let, and all the stuff came into being. And then God said, it's not good for man to live alone, let's make him a partner. And the second one was after God put Adam to sleep and created Eve, and then says, Adam, I've got something for you. And Adam wakes up, rubs his eyes, and looks and says, whoa, man! So she's been called woman ever since. And the third one was Satan. He says, Eve, God didn't really say that, did he? You won't die if you eat this fruit. Biggest lie in the world is in the 3rd chapter of the Bible. And he started making people doubt God's truthfulness. Why can't we rely on testimony? Mostly because our world is shot through and through with Satan's sin, which is pride. Pride made him want to be top dog, and God said, that position's already taken, you're out of here. Satan said, you wait and see. And we are the victims of that ongoing war between Satan and God. Pride, to me, shows itself in 2 ways that lead to lying. One is greed. It wants to suck you dry and throw you away. I worked for 12 years. I mentioned that when somebody mentioned equipment. I worked for 12 years for an architectural firm that specialized in church buildings. And for all but about the first few months of that, I was the traveling sales rep. I've been to church building committee meetings from Kansas City, Kansas to Muskogee, Oklahoma to just outside of New York City and New Jersey. And first really got acquainted with East Tennessee on some of those trips and fell in love with these. My boss, Chuck, had a partner previously. Chuck discovered that his partner was lying to potential clients, the churches and all, about what services we could provide and what fees were going to be and so on. And so Chuck told me, this partnership was split up a long time before I joined them, but Chuck and I were very good friends. And Chuck told me, he said, he asked Earl, he says, Earl, why do you lie to him? Earl says, you don't have any advantage if you don't lie. Now, Earl had been at one point an elder in the Christian church. And he was going talking to churches about having somebody design and build a building for him and lying to him. The flip side is power of control. It doesn't want to suck everything you've got out and throw you away. It wants to suck you in and control your life. Or in our society these days, control the narrative. The narrative, the way political situations use that word these days, I think means the way I wish the world would be and want the world to be. And of course I'm smarter than anybody else, so I know that's the way the world should be, and I'll do anything I can to get you to follow along with me, and I don't care if it ruins you or not. That is a whole big part of politics in our country right now. So, meet the teacher. Why should you believe me? I came in here just a little over 6 months ago and told JR I was a retired Christian church preacher and all sorts of stuff about me. Man, he's gullible. He didn't ask for any verification of any of it. You know what I really am? I'm Chuba Hubbard. And I'm a second cousin to L. Ron Hubbard, who started the Scientology group on the West Coast, and we've decided to branch out into Tennessee and suck all you good Bible Belt folks into that foolishness. Do I have a single NFL fan here today? Do you recognize the name Chuba Hubbard?
Yep.
Who's he play for?
Carolina Panthers.
You're right. Used to be, went to school at Oklahoma State, I think,
Yes, I think you're right.
which is where my wife Sandra graduated, so we followed their college football. Why should you believe me? Because everything I'm going to say to you tonight is testimony. And so you have to believe me, or this is of no value at all. We're looking for truth. Find truth, we need to know two things. What truth is, good definition, we've got a working definition. And how truthful is the source. Now, if we run a good Pentecostal church, this would, I would say this is my testimony, okay? I'll tell you something about me, so that it will help you to have some confidence in me, and will also help you understand why I am so, I'll need no word jar.
Passionate?
Passionate's a good word about this subject, okay? Some of the principles I will give you about how to learn about me will be the same principles we'll use to learn about the writers of the Bible, especially the gospel writers in the New Testament. If you want to learn about me, ask someone you trust, someone who might know. Any of you know that guy? Neither Ross nor JD's in here, they probably would. That's Larry Green. He's on staff at Johnson. Has been for years. I think he's about ready to retire. He's been office of the president in, well, he's a fundraiser. In 1970, I think it was, I was preaching in Odessa, Texas. Larry was the director of a youth organization called Christ in Youth. He came to Odessa to do a youth revival for us, and he was there for a week, and I got well acquainted. Much later, when I was in Indiana, this last time around, Crawfordsville, I met his brother-in-law, Kurt Flora. Kurt is married to Larry's youngest sister, Sondra. And then I realized a little later, I'd known Kurt since he was a teenager. When I was preaching in Kokomo in the 70s, his dad and stepmom in their church there, his folks were divorced, and Kurt and his older brother came to Kokomo on the weekends and came to church where I was preaching. So I'd known him since he was a teenager. I couldn't remember his name, I had to call my oldest son this afternoon. Say, what was the name of that? He then preached around the Crawfordsville area for a while. Anybody know him? Johnson Big Wood, that's Rob Flinger, he's a professor there. He also was a graduate of Omar Christian College, it's called now, Brian went to school in John. Now, write down my address, my phone number, and my email. And feel welcome to call me, text me, come visit me at any time to talk to me about this. Just call first, because I do go to the doctor and the grocery store. Come over here to church, and that's about it. You have to excuse the fact that I'm an old man living alone, so the house isn't always real clean. And I got a little dog that will jump in your lap if you'll let it. But I'm serious. I was born in 1942, when Ozark Bible College was just restarting. Yes, Jerry.
I just want to point out that your information's in the church directory too.
Yeah, thank you. Ozark Bible College was just reorganizing from a failed Ozark Christian College that had tried to start on the basis that Johnson did of a work school where you could work in the farm and get your school paid for and so on. I don't know if Johnson does that at all anymore, but it failed in Arkansas. Dr. F.W. Strong, an evangelist out there, asked Dad to come from Cincinnati, where he was assistant professor, Professor R.C. Foster, to help save the old school, which they didn't manage, but they reorganized the new trustees in 1942. I was born in the spring, college started that fall. Moved to Joplin, Missouri in 1944, because believe it or not, there were no jobs for students. In Rogers, Bentonville, Arkansas area, that is now the home of Walmart. There were all kinds of jobs, but they weren't there. My dad started preaching in a little church in Galena, Kansas, 10 miles from Joplin, across the state line. When I was a little boy, people would ask me what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I'd say a preacher like my daddy. Summer between my 6th and 7th grade year, we moved into Joplin. The college and the church had both gotten big enough, Dad couldn't do both. So he resigned from the church, bought a big house in Joplin, and we moved to Joplin. I started 7th grade in Joplin, lived in a little town of Galena, Kansas, had about 4,000 people in it. Joplin had 35,000. Big jump for a 12-year-old boy. I went to one of the 3 junior high schools in Joplin, Joplin Junior High School. With my right arm in a cast, I'd broken my arm at church camp that summer, and I knew 2 people in the school. And this little introvert of a bookworm kid just kind of shriveled. I just didn't know what to do. But for one thing, I went to what they called industrial arts class back then. And the first quarter was mechanical drawing, drafting. I'd been in that class for 2 weeks before. I thought, man, this is fun. I want to be an architect. Took what I could in junior high school, quarter 7th grade, quarter 7th grade, a whole semester. Or quarter 7th, quarter 8th, the whole semester, 9th grade. But I couldn't continue in high school because of the way the high school was set up. You either had to take technical, Votech, or college prep. And if you took Votech, you took drafting, you went to half a day to Votech school, where you learned auto mechanics and welding and that sort of stuff. I wasn't interested in that. So I went to college prep. Summer after my junior year, I was dreaming all along, I'm going to be an architect. I'll be Frank Lloyd Wright, I.M. Pei, and whoever else. Although I didn't know about those guys much then. June 1959, I was in a church camp. The Bible College rented the group camp at Roy River State Park for 3 weeks. 1 week for high school, 1 week for junior high, 1 week for junior camp, which was 4th, 5th, and 6th graders. The last Vespers evening, Friday evening, June 1959, red-headed young man with a real pretty wife named Lovell, Howard Montcastle, preached the Vespers. I do not remember what Howard said. I don't. But something in his message challenged 4 or 5 or 6 of us high school boys to go at the invitation and dedicate ourselves to what we used to call full-time Christian service, which is some kind of vocational Christian occupation. And I did. Gave up my dream being an architect. I'll be a preacher. Well, since the Bible College, my dad was the dean and was the one running this camp, I went back junior high week and junior week and worked in the kitchen. Washed pots and pans, swept floors, and made sandwiches. Junior week, the dean of the week, the guy who was in charge of it, was Don Bolton, the president of the college, father of one of my best friends. I had a few by then. Early in the week, I told him, Brother B, I've decided to be a preacher. He said, good, you can take my turn in chapel Saturday morning. Well, no, well, that wasn't what I meant. He wouldn't let me off the hook. Every time he saw me all week long, he said, you got that sermon ready yet? I knew I'd better have something ready because he's going to introduce me Saturday morning chapel as the preacher. Saturday right after lunch, the parents came to take the kids home. And so Saturday was a little bit truncated, shortened, you know, classes were a little shorter, give people time to pack their stuff. So I preached. I still remember what I preached. Last verse of 2 Peter, grow in the grace and knowledge of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. I thought growing in God is a good term, a good theme for grade school kids. I covered the Bible from Genesis to Revelation, went and sat down, looked at my watch, I preached 8 minutes. My boys say that's absolutely impossible, cannot be a truthful statement, because I never preached that short sermon in my life. Right? A little later that summer, 3 guys came to talk to me. I knew one of them, went to high school with one of them. He knew the other 2 from a different church camp. There were 3 in the area that church camp. And they wanted to form a gospel quartet and needed a bass singer. Greg knew me from high school, I sang bass in the choir, so they came, we formed a quartet, and we did youth rallies and church services and so on, through what was my senior year in high school till late spring it fell apart. We'd go do a service, and Craig would play the piano, Ellie McMeekin, the high tenor, would lead some songs, and Stuart York and I took turns preaching. My senior year in high school, I preached probably half a dozen or 8 times at those meetings, and a couple other places I've been invited to. School's almost out. I get a phone call from Don Earl Boatman, Brother B. He said, Ben, I need a preacher for the summer. I said, what? One of the students, Bruce Ammerman, was preaching for a little church in Burrville, Arkansas, Berryville for the uninitiated. Burrville, Arkansas, little church that met in the 4-H building of the county fairgrounds. Bruce was a missions major at the college, had to go spend the summer with a missionary, go spend the summer in Barbados. And Brother Boatman said, I need a preacher, somebody to drive to Burrville. This is one of these little, we call them preaching points, where the student went out and preached and come back and go to school, all excited to go preach again. That makes preachers, let me tell you. He said, can't find anybody else. I don't think he tried very hard. So he talked me into it, and I drove 102 miles, the shortest way I could find, each way. 10 weeks during the summer, from my folks' home in Joplin to Burrville, Arkansas, right across the state line in Arkansas, all straight south of Springfield, Missouri, to preach. Starting school that fall. Doing pretty well, was asked to preach a couple of times. I had been asked to start right after Christmas, preaching a little church in a little town called Jericho Springs, Missouri. My brother-in-law had been preaching there, and he was moving to a bigger church. He just asked if I'd like to. That's the way we did it back then. Did an interview, we just went. So the last week before Christmas vacation, one of the professors introduced something in the New Testament, was a New Testament class, that people sometimes use to accuse the Bible of having mistakes in it. It's an issue of numbers, and the old Hebrew numbers are hard to deal with anyway. I never even thought about the Bible might have mistakes in it. Surely not. I mean, my dad was the dean of the college and Bible authority for the whole area. I had to know everything. So I did the usual lackadaisical research he told us we ought to do, and came back to class Friday, 1960, day before Christmas vacation. I thought, well, he'll explain it. He got up there, and the explanations he gave were the same ones I had found. And I'm sitting there thinking, that's not good enough. That's not good enough. And then if that rascal didn't call on me to have the closing prayer. I remember to this day where I was seated in that classroom. Back row, third seat from the outside, north wall of the largest classroom we used for freshman class. So I stood up, said a prayer, bounced off the ceiling, shattered on the floor around my feet. That's the way it felt. School was out for Christmas break. First Sunday in January, I was committed to go to Jericho Springs. So I did. Preached for them for several weeks, and then about halfway through the semester, I can hardly tell this story. I resigned in tears in the middle of a sermon and told those people, I will not preach again until I'm sure I believe what I'm trying to tell you. They were so sweet and dear, I didn't. Finished out the school year, had an argument with Dad right after the last night. He says, somebody tells me you're not coming back to school next fall. I dumped on him all the things a teenage kid will have against his dad, you know. But my roommate that year was a lifelong friend. I do not remember meeting Skip. His family started coming to church in Galena, Kansas when my dad was preaching there. Then his dad became a Christian. Then his dad decided to become a preacher, came to the Bible college. And when I started junior high school, one of the 2 friends I had in school was Skip Lingman. Bert finished school, preaching in Afton, Oklahoma. Then he moved to Page, Arizona. Before he became a preacher, before he went to the Navy, Bert had been a steel worker. And he got a chance to work on the dam that made Lake Powell, upstream Colorado River from Grand Canyon. And started church in Page, and Skip came from there. moved in with me at the folks' house, room and board, Mom even did his laundry. So Skip and I had it figured out that I was gonna go home with him to Page that summer. We've been asked for a midnight shift on the dam. Skip says they're always needing midnight laborers. Now, this is in 1961, and we were gonna make $5 an hour. It's a lot of money. But we're working midnight shift on a big job, big damn job. I'm not cussing, that's what it was. About 3 weeks before school was out, Bert, Skip's dad, called and said, Ben, don't come. We're out on strike, it looks like it'll last all summer. Well, through the second semester of special school, Skip had been dating a girl he met at that church camp when we were in seniors in high school, before he moved out to Arizona. And then she was in nursing school in Springfield, and we used my little car I would take Skip up to see Alpha. That summer, Alpha went to Page to visit. I was standing on the roof of my parents' home, tearing off shingles. There was a big bad hailstorm, and some of the Bible college students who had the expertise had formed a little roofing company, and we were tearing off shingles. When a phone call came, Skip, Bert, Mildred, his mom, his little sister's name I can't remember, his little brother Chucky, and Alpha had gone joyriding one bright June summer afternoon in the mountains outside of Page. Left a mountain curve with no sign of skid marks, hit an 80-foot tall pine tree, snapped it off at the base, and came to a stop 50 feet from the stump. And the only one survived was Chuck. Here I'd lost my faith, I'd lost my job opportunity for summer, and all of a sudden I lost my best friend, my lifetime friend, this whole thing. And there I was. Wasn't anything to do, go back to school that fall. I didn't have the money to go anywhere else. I spent the summer painting my folks' house mostly. The professor who was helping me work out my schedule, one of Dad's co-workers, registrar of the college. I signed it for logic, harmony, music, history, and appreciation, writing, Spanish. And Paul Teach said, Ben, you don't have a Bible class. I knew I didn't have a Bible class. I didn't want a Bible class. No way, I did not want anything to do with it. I couldn't tell him that. It had gone straight to Dad. So I signed up for Life of Christ. Dad taught Life of Christ, so I thought I'd tune him out. The way they taught Life of Christ at the time, the first 2 weeks of the semester you studied a 4-page, single-spaced, small type, typewritten outline of the life of Jesus. Event, book and chapter of the gospel was in chronological order. You had to produce it from memory on the honor system. And just in case you thought you could cheat, you took a comprehensive test over it at the end of the 2 weeks. And then the professor picked up where he had left off the last semester, because it took about 3 years to go through the whole cycle. So you got 2 good solid weeks of overview, and then you got really detailed studies of how to really dig into the life of Christ. It just so happened that Dad was ready to start with the last week of Jesus' life, the death and resurrection. And he didn't just teach what the Bible said. He taught why we could believe that the resurrection was real. And by about halfway through second semester, I had come to the conclusion that if I could believe anything that I learned on testimony longer ago than 3 or 4 weeks ago, I had to believe that there was really a man named Jesus who was born in Bethlehem, preached in Judea and Galilee, was railroaded by the Jewish officials, crucified by the Romans, and 3 days later came back to life and showed himself to up to about 500 people alive again, and the message of him changed the world. I fought it. I did not want to believe it. I was going to go to college and become a speech professor. I don't know why I gave up on the architect's dream. I got part of that back later. God gave it to me, dumped it in my lap. I got to help design the new college campus. Never applied for that job at all. But anyway, I thought I can speak. Didn't even occur to this little introverted Missouri hillbilly kid. The only reason I could stand up and speak was because the Spirit of God was helping me when I preached. But I was going to go be a speech professor at some university and part-time photographer for Playboy. That was my goal. I fought it, and I did, but I could not. Now, I didn't have any warm feelings or any dream or message from God, although I did have several dreams that Skip was alive and talking to me, and I had to be able to tell my classmates that Skip wasn't really dead, he was alive. I think God sent those really just to give me some practice. But anyhow, I started preaching again. Dad was preaching in a church in central Missouri that had some troubles in the community. They asked him to come preach for a while. I made the trip with him a couple of times. And he asked if I could preach Palm Sunday and Easter because he was committed to hold a revival meeting during that week because the school let out that week. Students were supposed to go help in some church somewhere. Called it the week of evangelism. It wasn't spring break. It was the week of evangelism. So I said, yeah, I'll go. Almost exactly a year from the time I resigned to Jericho Springs, I preached those 2 Sundays at Edderville by the Lake Deals. Then after school was out, I started preaching for him for a year. 200 miles one way. Finally told him I've got to quit. I said, if I plan to be a preacher, I can't keep coming to preach to you because I drove 400 miles every Sunday. 200 there and 200 back. I said, I'm getting ready to see Sunday come. Doesn't have anything to do with you folks. It has to do with those miles. I just can't keep doing it. When Mary and I got married, we went there the Sunday after our wedding so I could introduce her to those folks. Lovely people. I just be proud. I then had other places I preached after school. Stayed and taught part-time as a senior instructor. Part-time as full-time as a graduate instructor. Then moved up to a suburb of Chicago to begin preaching. During those last couple of years, I helped to form an interest club we called the Defenders of the Faith. We sponsored a Bible science forum for 3 days on campus and invited a very capable preacher and a really scientist, Dr. Henry Morris, who was Creation Research Society, then it rolled into others. One that found that was one of our first speakers, J.R. I don't know if you know anything about Dr. Morris, he's gone now. But, and Mary and my first wife and I's first house guest was Dr. Carl Ketcherside, the preacher, for that meeting. The Defenders started making big flip-over charts, because I had painted one of them myself to use I'll show you the diagram later in this series that we used, which was Dad's origin. Folks, it would be so much easier for me to not do this. Like I said, I turned 84 in about 10 weeks. I'm alone. I've got a bad back. Maybe the new doctor I'm going to in March will help me, maybe he won't. It would be so much easier for me to sit in my recliner and not do this. But I can't quit. Who was the prophet there that said there's a fire in my bones? Was that Jeremiah?
Oh, you're asking the wrong guy, believe it or not.
If I can't remember, don't feel bad if you can't. I think it was Jeremiah says, I can't be quiet, there's a fire in my bones. I'm not even above bribing you to invite people. No, we're in church, I can't bribe. Incentivizing you. I'm almost done, my time's almost up. I've got a couple of gift cards here. Old-fashioned gift cards. Use them anywhere. This one's got Jackson on it. If you can bring 5 people next week who have never come or have not come to this big Bible study in the last 6 weeks, that gift card is yours. If you can invite 25 different people during the 12 weeks of this study, I got another one, it's got my picture on it. Folks, I'm not rich. Sold a house in Indiana, then able to buy a house here and do some work on it. But my reserve is getting about where I'm gonna have to be really careful. I get by on minimal social security and a couple little investments. But if I had the money, I'd give $1,000 apiece to anybody who would come in these 12 weeks and pass a comprehensive test to prove your hand just been sitting there to get the money. That's how important this is. Our world is going to hell because it has abandoned any concept of truth. It's not what I know or what I think, it's what I feel like. If I feel like I'm a girl, then I'm a girl. If I'm a girl and feel like I'm a man, I'm a man. Risk of simulated, I'd love the deep pants, that boxer that beat that girl nearly to death in the Olympics. I proved he was a guy. It would take about 3 seconds. But our world doesn't do that anymore. And if Christians are going to do any good at all in evangelizing the world, we have to know without a single doubt that Jesus was and is the Son of God, that He died and rose again.
Amen.
And I'm going to show you, I'll show you lots and lots of pictures. I haven't had them tonight. Show you lots of pictures of ancient manuscripts and historical stuff and so on to dig that foundation just as deep as I can get it for you. Well, real quick, about 3 minutes we got left. I want to show you what I call coming attractions. There's 7 ways that the Bible challenges our studies. It's not a single book, it's a library. It is an ancient book, and that has 2 parts. One, do we have the Bible as it was originally written? The newest parts of it are 2,000 years old. And how were the customs so long ago different? That was not so much for faith, but for understanding and how the Bible come alive. The Bible is a book from God, an inspired book. And we'll tell you how testimony of those who knew proves that. It comes from testimony from somebody's experience. It's a Middle Eastern book, and that gets us into how did we make it come alive. It is a translated book. And that is both a curse and a blessing in the English language. Dad collected English translations. He died at the age of 94. He was born in 14, so what was that, 2002? At the time, the family donated his collection over 100 English translations to the Bible College Library, and there have been a lot of them made since then. And we'll give you some helps on that one too. It is an unsystematic situational book. As a Bible teacher and scholar, I hate to call the Bible anything, but I don't know a better word. The Bible is not written so that you can read everything about salvation in book 7, sub-chapters 8, 9, 10, sub-paragraphs, so and so and so and so. It's just not written that way. Some of it's written to individuals. Some of it's just kind of generic history. Some of it's laws. Some of it's written to groups. It's often written to people to help overcome their problems, and they are the problem. Especially the Minor Prophet series that you guys were in when I started attending here. You got nerve to preach a book day by day through the Minor Prophets, man. I never tried that. And the Bible's a challenging book. It challenges us. There will be times, if you're studying the Bible, you will be tempted to say, well, I've always believed, red flag, red flag, red flag, red flag. Let it speak to you. It will challenge your worldview. It will challenge your morals. It will challenge you. I guarantee. One final point. Part of this study is a rescue from the ubiquitous, insidious, dangerous, and downright really bad Cyrano syndrome. Your assignment for next week. Get online and look up this guy. Cyrano de Bergerac, that's the big nose. Probably the most famous nose in literature, maybe in history. And see if you can figure out why I say the Cyrano syndrome destroys churches. And if you need a little help, read this poem from early American literature, Courtship of Miles Standish. Very similar theme. And if you're a movie buff from 20 or 30 years ago, Roxanne, Steve Martin, Roxanne,
Yeah.
was a remake of Cyrano de Bergerac, the play. It comes from a couple hundred years ago. That's your assignment for next week.